Nerds, I have Lourin Hubbard, who is running for U.S. Congress, challenging Devin Nunes, who is no easy opponent. We're gonna find out what is Lourin thinking, why is he running, and what makes him tick. We'll take some audience questions, but before we'll have none other than Andrew Yang and company warm us up.
There's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's in. Drew, come roll with the gang gang. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up. Yo, there's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's in. Drew, come roll with the gang gang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Lourin Hubbard, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Good. Happy to be here.
I appreciated you reaching out, saying, "Hey, be great to talk about what you're up to on Nerds for Humanity." And I said, "No problem. Right now, we're prioritizing candidates who are on the ofthepeople.us platform, which is something that I volunteer for." And I saw your profile up there and then reached out and said, let's do this. So tell me a little bit about yourself. And before we get into how you decided to challenge a pretty strong incumbent, tell me about who's Lourin Hubbard.
I'm a husband and a father of two daughters. So I'm a hashtag girl dad. And they really consume a lot of my time. But professionally, I'm an operations manager at the Water Resources Control Board here for the state of California. And really, that's kind of like looking at a whole bunch of these issues that are going on with water in California. Really kind of spurred me to start thinking about doing some public service in an elected capacity.
And would this be the first elected office that you go after?
It is.
Yeah. What was
I decided to just aim high.
Yeah, you're not messing around. Tell me about like how you decided to do it now. Like why now? Why this office?
It's really kind of a personal decision. I did a whole lot of stuff with over this past summer with organizing a lot of these marches with Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. And, we saw a march or peaceful protest that happened at the Capitol over the summer. And that was met with tear gas and things like that and ran off. All these people were ran off. And then watching what happened at the Capitol on January 6th and seeing people not tear gassed and able to literally penetrate the halls of our government and beat up police and all kinds of stuff. That kind of dichotomy I couldn't live with. A lot of things have happened to our country in a negative light over the last 3-4 years, where it's really becoming a question of if our democracy is going to last. And I couldn't look at my children and say, well, daddy was there and I didn't do anything. So I think I targeted Devin Nunes particularly for a kind of selfish reason. My mother-in-law is a really big fan of Devin Nunes, and she did not talk to us for since Election Day when we voted for Joe Biden till Easter. So for a good 5 months, she was like, no, Devin Nunes says this, he's talking the truth and this and that. So I'm running to show her that he doesn't speak the truth and that, regular people can do extraordinary things.
Must be a very interesting family dynamic. Tell me about this district. Obviously, it must lean Republican to elect someone like Nunes. How do you feel like the district is shifting, or
we're very Yeah, we're a very agricultural community here, and California is so diverse. But if you talk to people outside of California, it's either, the Bay Area or Hollywood, LA, and forgets about that middle part where we're really agricultural based. I think even Devin Nunes in his 2003, when he got first elected to the House, versus Devin Nunes in 2021, would not like each other. So he got in office and stayed in office, and people have just become automatic to his presence. It's kind of a situation where it's kind of a perfect storm for him, where the Democratic Party, because he's been in office so long, that the Democratic Party has just said, well, we got the rest of the state. It's just Devon's. We'll just give up on it. There's other competitive races that we can focus on. And they just kind of we just run these candidates who run like Republicans. And if there's no real choice there between someone who's contrasting Devin Nunes with, I want to be like Devin Nunes, but I'm not, I'm going to vote for this guy that has been in office, and I know he's been in office. He's got the experience.
Yeah, he's the devil, kind of thing is probably. I was just looking at the last. I think this was the last race. It's not like he crushed it. I mean, he, even with sort of gerrymandering, like he got 54 to 46.
He's been getting close. Andrew Jans ran in 2018 against him, and he only won by 5 points then. So he beat his previous score this last election, but he used to beat people by 20, 25 points. And now to get to that single digit margin, that's really kind of the work of a lot of the people who are on the ground. A lot of these organizers for these different Democratic clubs and things like that are doing the voter outreach, knocking on doors. We've registered a lot of people now in Fresno County, for example. We have a plus Democratic registration, where that used to be the opposite. So we're doing a lot of work. We're increasing that voter registration for Democrats, and we just need to give them a reason to go out and check that box when they go into a voting booth.
Nunes is also, looks like, famous for writing a memo in 2018 suggesting that there was a vast conspiracy against President Donald J. Trump. Do you feel like your district is pretty kind of locked in to that Trump support? I mean, how do you feel like it's going now that the former president is a little bit out of the spotlight?
Definitely in the southern part of the district, they are very much Trump country. There's pockets of people that are there and even people that would describe themselves as conservative that aren't Trump. But I think that Trump is still a big factor. He's still a big figure in the Republican Party in the southern part of the district. The northern part of the district is becoming way more Democratic. It's a more urban area. But he still has people. I still see Trump 2024 flags on houses and stuff as I'm going through neighborhoods. But that's kind of the key part, is people are looking at the Republican Party. We have a lot of independents who are looking at the Republican Party, who offers no solutions, no policies on anything but saving cat in the hat. And what is their big issue now? Preventing transgender kids from competing in sports. That's the real problem that you see in America. And I think people are looking at that and actually wanting problems and solutions to problems that we have,
Yeah.
and are willing to look outside of their what they would call their traditional scope, their traditional bubble, for those solutions.
It's interesting. It looks like Trump won this district also by about 6 points, similar to Devin. But the demographics are quite diverse. That you've got a pretty strong Hispanic population and almost 8% Asian as well. How are you finding your efforts landing in the district so far? What are you hearing from people when you tell them that, like, hey, I'm trying to earn your vote to represent you?
Yeah, I think what's happened in the past is Democrats have played a lot of identity politics and just assuming that the Hispanic vote is going to be there, that the Latino vote's just going to show up because we're Democrats. Look at Donald Trump,
yeah,
and haven't really been targeted and looked at. So that's one of the things that we've made sure with our campaign that we've done is we have volunteers and campaign staff that are from these smaller communities, these agricultural farm labor communities. So when we go out there, they're speaking not what I like to call Google Translate Spanish, but they're actually speaking conversational Spanish and reaching out to these folks. Another group of people that is often not targeted is our large Hmong community. We have one of the largest Hmong communities in the United States, and they have just been left out to be targeted by whoever. So we have staff that speak Hmong, and we're targeting them as well. And I think that getting out there and being seen and knowing that this guy's going to work for me has been pretty effective in that capacity.
Now, when they ask you, all right, Lourin, you seem like a nice, smart guy. What are you going to do different than Devin? Because Devin's like kind of established. He's on some committees, like, he has the support of the former president, blah, blah, blah. Like what's going to change if Lourin Hubbard shows up in DC instead of the current guy?
Yeah, that's a conversation I've had a lot of, actually, and getting out and talking to folks that say, "Oh, Devin Nunes, I know he's looking out for me. He's working for me." And my response to that is, if he's been there for 20 years, how has your life changed? These things that you say you care about, water, building water infrastructure, bringing jobs to the valley, things like that. He hasn't done any of that. So what our campaign is focused on is giving people a reason to go to the polls. If we look at not only 2016, but 2020 and those primaries, Bernie Sanders was very effective in his message throughout this entire region, where he took the primary in every one of these communities that we have in the South Valley. Bernie won. And so our message is going out there telling people the biggest issue that has been told to me when I go out and talk to people is Medicare for all and fixing healthcare. That goes through people that are traditionally Democrat, but also people that consider themselves Republicans. Is I'm paying a lot for healthcare, and I feel like I'm not getting the services that I need. And when I go out there and talk to people about how a Medicare for all system is not only like morally right, because we'll go out there and expand access to healthcare for millions of people, but it also saves us money in the long run. And I get both ends. So those people that are that liberal bleeding heart, but also those people that are fiscally conservative, and they understand when you break it down to them, hey, we're going to save $2 trillion a year if we expand healthcare with a Medicare for all single payer type system. That's been pretty effective. I also talk to a lot of people about mainstream media, and that is one thing that a lot of people get caught up on is they're in the Fox News bubble, or they're in the MSNBC bubble, or the CNN bubble, and breaking down the talking points of the Fox News viewers and letting them know, hey, there's more out there than Fox News. I don't particularly get my news from mainstream media types, but let's take a look at what's happening in your life, not what someone else is telling you on the news. What's happening with you? What's happening with your life? You said, you just told me that your hours got cut from a job. You don't know when you're going to find another job. That's stuff that is dining table type issues that people really kind of gravitate towards, and really kind of cuts across their defensiveness when it comes to me being a Democrat in this Republican area.
And have you had success? Like, I have members of my family who are not normal Republicans, like Trump Republicans, and they consume information from not just Fox. Now they're watching this OAN thing, which
America.
is
And Newsmax.
Yeah, and it's almost it's like speaking two different languages, and you cannot. I have not been able to break through, partly because they hear these talking points over and over and over again. So, as an example, if I were to try and discuss healthcare, they would instantly say, like, well, I don't believe in socialism, or I hear in Canada, you have to wait 15 years to see a doctor, and I don't want people to take away my freedom. And they're very kind of quick and snappy, and everybody remembers them. And you cannot get into the nuance and the detail and say, well, actually, let's look at the data on what the average wait time is, or let's look at how much we're spending in the U.S. Currently for worse results. I haven't had success with that. So I'm curious, when you talk to folks in your district who are kind of marinated in that Fox OAN world, are you able to break through and make some small cracks to get a common ground?
Yes, we have, and that's because that personal bubble, like getting into what's happened to them personally. I've had a conversation with a young lady. I crashed Devin Nunes' Freedom Fest that he had, where Don Jr. showed up and all this other stuff. Earlier, about a couple months ago, he had this event, and I was out there, protesting, like, where's Devin? Let's debate. And this lady came out with her Trump flag, and I went over there and talked to her, and she was into the QAnon, and she doesn't watch Fox News. She watches YouTube videos and YouTube personalities who are telling her information. And she was from Missouri originally, and she said that she's been waiting for a surgery for 14 years to get this surgery done. She moved to California. She's on Medi-Cal, which is our state's Medicaid program. And she's finally on this list to have the surgery that she's been waiting for 14 plus years. And when we started talking about healthcare, she was like, oh, I'm very familiar with the health system in England. And do you know you have to wait 18 months to get surgery? And I was like, well, 18 months sounds a whole lot better than 14 years, doesn't it? You're right. And then when they get that surgery, how much does that cost them? I got approved to have my surgery, and it is still going to cost me about $12,000. I was like, there you go. Yeah. There you go. So like talking to people about those issues, everybody's had, if they're lucky, they haven't, but everybody's had that thing where they had to go to the emergency room for something, and they got this bill back that said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I was only here for 2 hours, and you gave me some Tylenol, and it's $3,000." That's a little ridiculous. And so, like, medical debt is one of those things that a lot of households experience. I know personally, my in-laws experience it, and that is one of the things that I have used to penetrate their bubble from the try to reel them in from the Q conspiracies and the Fox News. She doesn't watch Fox News anymore. She's into the Newsmax, but reeling them in from that. That's where I get the most effective conversation. Is she is now on Medicare. She got approved for that disability, and not to be blunt with it, but just say, how's that working out for you? You don't have the medical debt, the $50,000-$60,000 that you were in. It's good, right? You're using it. It's good. I think that's what a lot of Democrats in this area are afraid of, is being called a socialist or this or that.
Right.
And I lean into it. Devin Nunes is gonna call you that regardless. He gave out a mailer last cycle with his own book about the evils of socialism. He's gonna call you that regardless. And so if we lean into that and just say, okay, I'll be here at this date, and I'll just wait for your constituents to go ahead and give me back those Social Security checks that they're collecting. Turn in their Medicare cards.
Yeah.
Not use the police. Not use the fire department.
Yeah. It's maddening how. I mean, it's maddening and quite impressive that Trump somehow ran on how he was going to protect Medicare, but his opponents are a bunch of dirty socialists. And it's like, wait a minute. To your point, Medicare is a heavily government subsidized service. And when I mentioned that to my mom, who is a Republican, she's like, well, I've been paying into, my Medicare contributions and Social Security contributions all my life. And I think what they don't realize, and the economists have already run the numbers, that people are taking out more than they put in. And so if you really want to pull you up from your bootstraps, you do really need to stop taking money from Medicare and Social Security. If you really are saying every man for himself, then stop drawing out, because younger people who are still working are contributing basically to older folks who are getting those benefits. And I'm fine with it, but it's weird to hear people take money from a social program and then say they don't like social programs.
Yeah, there's that contrast, if you will, between people that are using these programs that at the same time are advocating for or support these candidates and officials who want to privatize the whole thing. Really, ideally, that's what they would like to do, and a lot of their stuff is shifting towards privatizing it, but they have no problem collecting it and donating to them and making sure they stay in office.
Yeah,
which is a brings me to an issue that I think is one of the tools in my tool bag for talking to a lot of voters. Because I'm originally from Bakersfield, which is a little bit south of the district, but that's Kevin McCarthy's district. I grew up down the street from him. He went to my high school. I've met him several times. Went to my former church when I was there. We look at these people who are voting and supporting these folks, and those that are on the lower income scale, and we look at them and say, why are you supporting these people who don't have your economic interest at heart? They want to do things that don't help you, but help their donors. And it becomes a value. They're voting with their values and not their wallet.
Yeah.
And it's hard for Democrats to understand that. but I'm on the phone doing my call time as a candidate with a lot of donors who are they make more money than I do, and I'm asking them for money, and they're going to give me money. They give me money even though I would probably raise your taxes if it means I get more programs for the people that make less. And it's the same kind of thing. They're not donating or voting with their wallet in mind. They're voting and donating with their values. They value something other than money. And it's the same thing for these lower economic Republican voters. They're voting with values other than money. And so being able to connect with them on those issues, those value issues, has been more effective, I think, than trying to say, hey, don't you know we're trying to give you money? We're trying to save your wallet.
Yeah, it is so interesting that you see a lot of high income people voting for Democrats, even though it will result in probably more taxes for those high income people. And then you have many working class people voting Republican, even though they will get less support and less services from the government. But I agree, it's because people vote on values. And one thing I did want to share, because it's just such a bee in my bonnet, is here is the actual analysis, and this is on PolitiFact, and it was done by the Urban Institute on the average contribution in taxes, and then what people typically take out over the course of their lifetime for Medicare and Social Security. And in almost every scenario, people are putting in less than they're taking out. And this is nonpartisan. It's not like Republicans or Democrats. This is everybody. Like if you are a 2-income household earning 44 grand each, you will have put in 700 in taxes, and you will take out nearly $1 million in benefits. And in every case, so if you really are some kind of like diehard capitalist, please stop taking money out of Social Security and Medicare, because you did not put in as much as you're taking out. So, go ahead, turn those checks back, and you've got your freedom.
I just like you said, the capitalism is cool. It's great and everything, right? But what a lot of these like Republican capitalism people forget is that capitalism has something called market failure. And that's an actual thing. They need to realize that there are certain things that the market does not do effectively, can't fix. Healthcare, Social Security payments being some of those things. So I particularly have the mind that I think Republicans are afraid to touch it right now because they get so much support from older people who are using these services, but they just hope it runs out on its own. And it never worked to begin with, and then it just burns and crashes, and now they have an excuse to get rid of it for everybody.
Yeah, it's a hot topic. This whole, as someone who has benefited greatly from the economic system we have here, I will say, I think a lot of us are okay paying more taxes because we need a functioning society to continue to, operate in the private enterprises that we do. And in the long run, if you are comfortable, it is not good for significant chunks of the population to be in deep poverty, without education, without healthcare, because at some point, that system's not going to be able to sustain itself. And why would anyone put up with it? And the whole argument that like, well, I've done well because I work hard. It's like anybody who's done well, I'm sure you work hard. You were also very lucky, and you probably had a lot of help, whether you see it or not. But you benefit from a national infrastructure. You benefit from, clean water, clean air. You benefit from a judicial system, the rule of law. Like there's all these things that we need so that we can reach our full potential. And so I hope more people, I think that's why you see a lot of high income people in the Democratic Party, because I think they see the long game, that this is, you can't just screw people over and think that you're going to be able to keep going.
Ask Louis how it went for France in 1789. It wasn't that great.
I don't want to see anybody with pitchforks rolling up in Palo Alto anytime soon.
I'm glad you put up that graphic, because as a person that's so analytically minded like myself, gets to see that I am about public investment. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a product of public investment. Went to public schools. Mm-hmm. I could only go to college because I got Pell Grants and student aid and things like that. So it's to me, we need to target our money and our resources and use those for the biggest return. And so that's what government spending is supposed to be, is investment in resources. And I think a lot of people want to look at the federal budget as if we're a big family and we're at the kitchen table and like trying to balance our checkbooks, and not realize that, hey, if we look at it that way, if I take out a $50,000 loan to go to college and I get an education, I get a degree, I'm probably going to be a more productive person, as opposed to if I took out a $50,000 loan and spent the weekend in Vegas. Mm-hmm. Probably not as productive. I could win and make more money, but the chances of that, But that's what we need to do. We need to target the resources, look at what's effective, what's an effective program, and if it's something's not working, cut it out. Gone.
So let's talk about that. That's a hot topic, especially for a lot of the folks who watch this channel, given that we started out with a big focus on Andrew Yang's campaign for president, and a kind of flagship policy proposal he had was around unconditional basic income, which is the opposite of targeted programs. And one of the arguments is like, hey, the Pell Grant was great for Lourin, but for someone else, like maybe they could have used similar money to start a business or to learn a trade or to, buy their first, small apartment or condo or house, or to help with their parents, healthcare bills or whatever. Yeah. What's your view on basic income? Do you see that? Would you support that, or how would you feel about it?
I'm becoming increasingly supportive of it. Over here in California, Michael Tubbs was the mayor of Stockton. Yeah. And he did an experiment, and the findings of it were tremendous, where we gave people money every month with no strings attached, and they used that money not frivolously, but on actual spending that stimulated Stockton's economy.
Yeah. And
I think for like my district in particular, with us being so agriculturally based, agricultural manufacturing in farm work is becoming more and more, automation is coming in more and more. So I think that's something that in the future we're going to have to probably look at. This pandemic was a great experiment where you could do it on a large scale. We didn't really track the spending, but we did see, after people got their stimulus money from the government, the economy was stimulated.
Yeah.
And so, that I've been looking at these job reports the last couple of months after the stimulus, where they're not as, economists were hoping for more jobs. We had that month after everyone got stimulated, created a whole bunch of jobs. I think people are finding out that when you give people money, they spend it. And that spending benefits the economy. And so doing a universal basic income with no strings attached and just give people money, I think people are apprehensive to do it for the same reasons why we don't like to shelter the unhoused people without any kind of strings attached. They have to get clean and this and that. It's just this conservative mindset that people have. But I think it's shown to be really effective in doing what its objective is.
I think the other benefit is that what you see with these unemployment benefits is a strange incentive system where if someone were to get a job, they may be economically worse off than if they were to remain unemployed. And you see a lot of employers saying, hey, I can't hire people because there's too much unemployment support. And one of the beautiful things about basic income is like someone would continue to get that and they could get the job. And then they can make even more money because they have the basic income plus their wages on top. And so like, it's not crazy when they've been plenty of studies where you see a rational, economic minded individual, because of generous social programs that drop off when you earn a little more money, it is not the right call for them to work. And so, and then not to mention there are people who are full-time caretakers of their parents or their kids, and they get there's nothing for them. And so I want to shift gears a little bit, Lourin, talk about a hot topic right now, which is immigration. And I'm curious, being in an agricultural area, I'm guessing there are cases where some businesses actually depend on migrant labor. And I'm wondering, how do you think about balancing that? Because you're also in a +6 Republican district where people are pretty fired up about border control and immigration law. How do you thread that needle?
Well, I mean, look at what Devin Nunes is saying, that immigration is terrible. We not doing any work on solving that issue. But that's kind of been the Republican point to begin with, is demonizing immigrants. Even though they don't think they are, that's exactly what they are. If they really wanted to fix immigration and stop it completely, they would make it 100% illegal for any undocumented person to work in the United States. But they don't do that.
No.
They just like to talk about it, but don't do that.
Yeah.
Because when you dig into it, you find out that, like Donald Trump has a whole bunch of undocumented immigrants working at his resorts. Devin Nunes has undocumented Nunes working at his family's farm in Iowa. They benefit from it just as much as anyone else. But because of that, because these people are in the shadows and there's always this fear of immigration being called and then having their livelihood ripped apart, it's something we need to fix. And politicians have talked about fixing immigration for years, years and years. In California, it used to be someone could come up to, you could travel up from Mexico, do the migrant farm labor, travel with the seasons, and then just go back home. You didn't now, because this hard border that we have, people have to go, when they go travel to do the labor, have to stay. They don't know that they'll be able to come back.
Right.
And so like it would be very easy to me to come up with a guest worker program. Another thing that needs to be focused on is actually funding to get more judges to adjudicate a lot of these cases, with the Kamala Harris issue at the border, where she told people just don't come.
Mm-hmm.
I look at that as a person. Yeah, maybe I'm like running for office now, but I still have this shared lens of being a regular person. And I looked at her saying that, and I looked at Donald Trump saying that, and I saw no difference.
Yeah,
it's about compassion and caring. And come to find out, when we actually got these cases adjudicated, 70% of the 70 to 80% of the people that came across the border a couple years ago in the big migrant train qualified under the current laws it is to come into the United States. The 14th Amendment applies to everyone in that due process, and we're not giving it due process now. We're not living up to the American promise.
Yeah, it's such a. It seems like it's very convenient for both parties to make it fairly one-sided. Like for the Republicans to say, "Oh, it's people are pouring in, and we have to lock down this border," and then for the Democrats to say, "Hey, we're a country of immigrants. Everybody's welcome." There has to be a point where we can't support unlimited immigration. And there also needs to be a point where we can continue to benefit from the talent and labor that our economy needs, especially, in an agricultural area like that's hard. That's not work that every American wants to do.
Well, you know what I found? So I started my career at the Department of Social Services. Mm-hmm. And there's always this belief that illegal immigrants are coming in and getting services and things like that, which is not true. You could be undocumented, and maybe you had a child that was born in the United States. That child could get benefits, mm-hmm. but they don't get the benefits themselves. But I think what a lot of the problem is, and this is why the issue is more of these like cultural things, is that we look at the brown immigrants that come in from the south of the border, and they traditionally don't assimilate, right? They don't, mm-hmm. like on the scale, tend to not be American. But we have, here we have a large Asian population, but the Asian population is silenced. The majority look at them as the model minority, which is a myth to begin with. But that's not their problem. They don't tend to look at that problem. A lot of people that come in from the north, they don't look at that problem. A lot of these Europeans, they don't look at that problem. It seems to be only focused on the brown people. And that's where you kind of get into these culture war things that Republicans like to keep the conversation in, and not actually focus on the issue at hand.
So it sounds like your position would be to advocate for a pretty robust guest worker program, and that would benefit both the farmers in your district and be a much more humane approach for the workers who currently kind of have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this I can tell you, this labor is intensive, and labor is the biggest cost to these ag producers. Mm-hmm. So like raising the minimum wage, maybe it benefits some workers, but these producers on their margins will say, well, if I have to raise my labor costs, I'm just going to do with less workers. Mm-hmm. And that's not really great. But on the flip side of that, a lot of the workers that do this labor are undocumented. So there's always, again, that fear of actually having a voice and speaking out against your boss if something is happening, something going on, to where they don't feel comfortable speaking out and speaking up and organizing and saying, hey, so and so farm is paying their workers $20 an hour. Let's collectively bargain for that.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to happen if they're undocumented. So that would fix a lot of these issues and concerns. You know, when we tripled the border patrol as far as budgeting, we've added. It's funny that the party of less government has added all these government agencies like ICE and all these other things, Homeland Security, for protection of these things, and we still have the same issues, if not more so, than we did before these agencies existed. So again, looking at these problems from an analytical point of view, what are we getting for the amount of money that we're paying for this? Because it's not less people crossing the border. Because a couple of years ago, before Donald Trump became president, like immigration from Mexico was net zero.
Mm.
So what are we really getting for this?
Yeah, we're getting people who have a lot of anxiety and who are very upset about the changing culture and demographics, and we're giving them something to point at and makes them feel good to see that wall go up and be told that, well, once I build this wall, like it's going to be just like in the old days, and everybody's gonna,
especially when you like find out that the majority of their undocumented people, you can just fly in or come in on a boat and just disappear. Oh, I overstayed my visa. Well,
yeah.
It
is. I totally agree with you that, and whenever I bring this up with my Republican family members, they never have a good answer. I'm like, it's like, if you and Trump felt so strongly about illegal immigration, why didn't you crack down on illegal employers who are benefiting from low-cost, unprotected labor? And if you cut off the demand for that labor, that's the fastest way to cut off more border crossings, not adding an extra foot of wall. Because guess what? People climb over stuff. If they have no options and they need a job,
Yeah, El Chapo had like miles of underground tunnel.
Yeah, like that's the law of economics. Supply will meet demand, wall or not. But that would be very harmful to a lot of like meatpacking industry corporations, corporations that need that low cost labor to then provide products and services to consumers at basically subsidized rates. Like what we pay for here is subsidized by illegal labor. So you can't be pissed about migrant workers and then be able to buy like all your produce for like pennies on the dollar versus what people like. Because I lived in Switzerland previously, where they crack down on illegal employers, and it's all Swiss labor, and they get paid like $20-$30 an hour, and that's why you pay $10-$15 for a hamburger, because it doesn't have any of the subsidized low cost labor that goes into it. And that's a trade-off I don't know that Americans are ready to make.
Well, probably not, but at the end of the day, that is something that they morally have to get ready for.
I totally agree.
But it would be an ideal world, like these meat packers and things like that would use their lobbying power to actually force their representatives to do something on the issue, to meet in the middle, whether it's something like we have now where I don't know, something like we have now where like restaurants can pay people below the federal minimum wage if they get tips, or I don't, a system can be devised, but to kind of control the cost to the consumer. But at the end of the day, we have people that are getting ripped away from their families, getting ripped away from their kids, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, like, we love to talk about how China is a terrible adversary, and they are in many ways. But when you buy that big screen TV for $400, like that's trade with China. That we have to acknowledge that when we go to Walmart and we fill our cart with all this stuff for like a couple $100, you can't benefit from that and then say we want to stop trade with China. Like it's basically subsidizing the consumerism that we see every day here.
But that's what Donald Trump was effectively able to do, was to get people to be disconnected from reality.
Yeah. And
not be able to follow the thought process through to its endpoint, to the conclusion. Hey, if we have all these things, these trade embargoes with China, how much am I going to start paying for this?
Yeah.
That's not thought through. But when it comes to like raising minimum wage for fast food workers, it's going to raise our Big Mac prices. They have no problem thinking that through.
Yeah. True. We've got a couple. I know we're running short on time, Lourin. We have a couple of audience questions. If anybody wants to ask Lourin a question, go ahead and put it in the chat now. Gnomes Rocks is saying, with yet another drought in California, how do you feel about water rights for farmers and corporations?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do in my job at the Water Resources Control Board is we have implemented a program, Sigma, for sustainable groundwater. That is part of the part of the problem is we can develop aquifers where water gets collected and goes in, but when it's under the surface, that water shifts, and we have no way of monitoring how much groundwater is actually being pumped. So we have a community, Corcoran, in the south part of the valley that's actually sinking. That's actually sunk 11 to 15 feet in some places because of all the groundwater pumping that has occurred. So one of the things that I'm looking into and talking with folks is, how do we balance this commercial use with this residential use? And farms and corporations are big. They have hundreds and thousands of acres of farmland that needs to get watered, but the biggest use of water in the Central Valley and in America is the American lawn. So people watering their grass for that nice green year-round look is using up, on average, something like 480 gallons of water per watering day. Is what, if you water your lawn for 15 minutes, it's about 480 gallons of water. And if you times that by how many houses there are, that's a lot of water. And every time we get into a drought, it's always called on residents to, hey, take shorter showers, stop watering your lawn, this and that. So one of the things that we are talking about implementing, and the city of Fresno has done it, a lot of these other outlying counties have done it, are giving tax incentives for people to install like drought resistant landscaping. That's something that can be done. But for our farmers, another state program that the state of California is doing that really the federal government can really get involved in is our water efficiency enhancement, where these farmers switch to like a drip irrigation form instead of flood irrigation, where they're just spraying water everywhere, really targeting that water use to be more efficient, where we could use less water, get the same amount of crop yield. Installing drip irrigation is expensive. The material is expensive. And that's something that the federal government can do, is come in and bring that investment in those dollars, and do that. Another thing that we do not do really well in California, and it's for as long as the state has been a thirsty state, is really expand our water storage. We have not done that nearly enough, to where we always hear the stories about like all this water, when it happens, gets run off into the Delta in Northern California. That's because we have no place to put it. So really a federal investment, federal dollars in expanding water storage and building that infrastructure. Not only will we bring jobs for people to build that infrastructure, but we'll also help address our water issues here in California.
Great stuff. Hopefully we get that infrastructure bill. I'm guessing you would have voted for it if you were in Congress.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Question about the guest worker program. How will you get people not to stay once they're here?
It's the same question that happens with people overstaying their visa now. But I think the realization that has to happen with America is just because we want to live here doesn't mean all the people that come here to work want to be here. A lot of people send money back to their families. If they had the preference, they would come up and follow the seasons, do their work, and go home. And they stay here now because they can't do that. So I think one of the things that I do, like personally, is look back at history and what history has told us. And history has shown that when you have a robust guest worker program, that they don't stay. They come do their job and move along with the seasons. And that's kind of been the case here in the Central Valley. The growing seasons and harvest seasons continue on up through California into Northern California into Oregon and Washington. So a lot of people that are doing grapes down in California are the same people that go up and pick apples in Washington later on in the fall. So, these understanding, we call them migrant workers for a reason, because they're always on the move. But again, having documentation and being able to have information on folks, we would be better able to track if they leave, and then having a pathway to citizenship. Oh, I've been a guest worker for a year and a half. Okay, I think I have my family here now. I met a lady, and we want to have a family. Now I want to start the process to be a citizen. Because a lot of people don't understand that there is not a line to get in for citizenship. I have a good friend of mine, Bea. Her dad just became a citizen of the United States in 2019, and it was a 14-year process at the cost of $80,000. It is not easy to do. I think people just think, oh, you just fill out a form and that's it. But that's not the case. But having a system in place where I can first get that guest worker pass, and then if I choose to stay, have the ability to get citizenship down the line, something we need to do.
Yeah, it's interesting in that a well-enforced guest worker program in many ways should appeal to those who are so concerned about unlimited immigration, because you would not provide the incentive to be able to work once you exceeded the number of guest worker passes you issued each year. And so, like, in theory, it should be a bipartisan program, because if you're a Democrat, you're like, hey, I want people who are working to have to be able to be in the light and do it with the rules. And then if you're a Republican, you'd be like, okay, great. Then we can make sure that we only issue enough passes for the workers we need, and then it's enforced. Like it should be bipartisan, but it isn't. Like many things in this country. Hopefully, Lourin, you might be an example of someone that can work with we have to be able to work together. Like, we cannot go in this red versus blue thing. We're not going to get anything done, and the country will just suffer. So,
Yeah, and that's the
yeah.
founding fathers knew that, and that's why I'm of the mind that the filibuster is unconstitutional. But that's just me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a growing that maybe that's well, no, that's not bipartisan either. I think whoever's on the minority party seems to love the filibuster. But I mean, it would be great to get your voice in Congress. And I given that Nunes only won by 5-6 points last time, who knows, man? Maybe you'll be the one that pulls it off.
I'm hoping.
All right, Lourin, anything else you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap up? How can they get to know you more? How can they follow you on Twitter? What do you want to share?
Oh, absolutely. So you can follow our campaign at www.lourin, Lourin, Hubbard, HUBBARD.com. And we're actually having our campaign kickoff event here in Fresno at Full Circle Brewery on June 19th. At 2 p.m. It is a Black-owned brewery in town, and we are going to start the campaign off right. And you can follow me at Twitter, at Lourin Hubbard on Twitter.
All right. Well, check out Lourin, and I'm so glad that you're also listed on Of the People. So that's another way for people to stumble upon you and your campaign. And it was great having you on the show, Lourin.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
With that, we're going to say goodbye, nerds.
Bye, nerds.